So I'm now going to transition to our next session, and that will be with Raven Veal, my former IBM colleague, and we've worked on some racial equity work before. So Raven, I'm happy to see you here today. And the talk will be on Citibank, empathy, insights, and curiosity in design. So if I can have Raven step up and to the stage, if you will, and I will hand it over to her.
Hi there. So I'm sorry to disappoint you, but Dr. Raven Veal is not going to be on this panel, unfortunately, as she could not make it today. But we do have some great people, which is me, and it is also Chris Frazier. So just to set the table, this panel is about how do we advance racial equity in product design. And I'm really excited to talk about the topic. I'll start off by introducing myself, and then I'll pass it over to Chris. So I'm Dr. Dominique Harrison, and I am the director of the Racial Equity Design and Data Initiative at CITI Ventures, which is also under Citibank. And CITI Ventures operates like an incubation lab where we're able to invest in new kind of products and businesses, but we're also able to create products and services for communities and the needs of business owners. So there's kind of a mission-driven kind of statement to our work. And I'm leading a new initiative that really seeks to understand how we can use technology to advance racial equity. So it's a big undertaking, and we're still thinking through how we're going to do that. But I'm really excited about the work, and I think there are a lot of things in this discussion today that very much align with the things that you all learn at school, but also the kind of jobs and careers that you're interested in. So I'll pass it over to Chris.
Hi, everyone. I was able to join a little bit early and caught the last bit of the last session. And wow, I love the conversation. Hi, Chris Frazier. I'm from CITI Design, from our personal banking and wealth management group. And what that means is we look across a large spectrum of our products, be it credit cards, partnerships, our internal programs. I'd like to think of it as a watch per se, where the front of the watch is the customer experience, and the back of the watch, the gears, is where a lot of the work that we do happens. And I'm so happy to be here with Dominique, because part of that is not just how we think about our apps and our user experiences, but also how we impact in different ways the world around us. So we have a lot going on in our technology group. That's where I come from in CITI. And it puts us at the user experience forefront of many different things, many different tools that are internal facing and external facing, our consumer apps, websites, and our many different partner products that exist out there in the world. So it's fun, it's exciting, but on the topic that we come together today on, I think it's so important that our experiences also embody the world around us and who we are. So we've put a lot of work into our inclusive design space, making sure that we bring more and more voices into the mix of not just our culture, but the outcomes of what we do, and also contributing to the world around us. We also look at projects that we can bring our unique services to and help the world, and in different ways. And very, very inspiring to hear some of the voices here today who kind of called attention to that. So Dominique, I'll pass back to you.
Yeah, so I'd love to, just kind of have some open conversation with you, Chris, to kind of tease out, some of the things that we're learning in our work, but, how we got into this. So I'd love to hear from you. How did you get into design, and how did you get, to this job today?
Wow, I've always been into art, and I come from a generation a few back, and in that, the time that we came into, technology was so new, the web was so new, so many different ways to express yourself digitally, but they were at their infancy, really. And I jumped in with a curious mind, which I think anyone who is in the field of art immediately has. They want to explore not just how they feel about something, but also how they express that feeling. And that's what really drove me into the space. I would say how that transformed into a function was much more unique. It was a story where my opportunities look different than other people's opportunities. I came from an art and choral background, so I had a little bit of that to bring me forward. But I took a different path. I went to an art school. I went to Art Institute of Dallas, but also sort of switched it up a little bit and went to a computer program at a different school and said, you know what, I don't know what I want to be, but I jumped in, found my honing around art. And since then it's flourished into at CITI. And throughout my career, opportunities to continue to be a sponge, learn about what's around me, transform it into something that can be meaningful. Sometimes it's honing yourself. Some other times it's honing a product that will face the world. And how you do that is really how you use your voice and your talent. So finding that path for myself into where I am at CITI today was really just an important building of my own confidence. But when I got it, but at CITI, what that means is I get to represent a lot of different aspects of design and our outcomes, and do it as, again, part of a culture of CITI, but also bring that wide range of my own experiences into the world that we deliver products within. So yeah, hopefully that kind of gets a good setup, right, for more sort of thinking about where we go tomorrow.
I love that. And I love the fact that you said that you've had a unique experience that got you here, right? I think that many folks think that there needs to be a traditional pathway to becoming whatever the career is or whatever the job title is. But oftentimes, because of life, our journeys go up and down, or they go to the left or the right. And so, I describe my experience in a similar way. I ended up, I was majored in advertising, minored in sociology, thought I wanted to be a business exec, but I still loved research and I still loved learning, and enjoyed school. Went on to get my master's in media studies. And then I decided to get a PhD in communication technology and society. And really, I wanted to dig deeper into issues around tech. And so I was interested in, access to the internet and, what that means for people's lives. And, the internet is important to the daily function for many of our lives. And so that was what pushed me forward to get that degree. And then after I graduated, I had experience in nonprofits and think tanks where I was thinking through, like, what does AI bias mean for communities of color? What does access to the internet mean? Or what does disinformation and misinformation mean for community of colors? And what are the real kind of consequences of those kind of things that are happening on these platforms, and what they mean for folks' lives? And so when I saw this opportunity at CITI Ventures, I thought it was really unique because I got to apply all of my expertise and experience into a position that's really pushing me to think through, like, what does it mean for a bank to advance racial equity, right? And how do you think about that in the development of products? And how do you think about that in terms of how data is used, or user experience research? And so I'm really, really excited to be here. And I'm excited about the opportunity to see the change that we can make within our institution. And so that brings me to the topic at hand, Chris. How do you define racial equity? It's a word, it's a term that folks have thrown around, especially in the last couple of years, given the murder of George Floyd and others. And so I'd just like to hear from your purview. What do you think? What does that mean to you?
I'll frame it in two perspectives. One is in the workplace, and then the other is in life. And the first answer, I think, is to that. It's that, our voice is the first bias that we receive. And that is not because our voice isn't heard. It's because before our voice exits ourselves, some sort of identification has been made. And at times it puts us at a disadvantage. That's how the world sees it. We know it to feel like every moment that we are in society, we think about the people around us. Probably more often the people around us think about us. So having a space of safety, especially for artists, is many times than not internalized. And then when we see the world around us, we speak through our art, we speak through our voice, and we speak through our soul. So to be equal in society, I think we have to have the opportunities to find equal voice, right? That does not become filtered by what is in front of us, right? But instead, what is behind that. Now, it's very important that we are who we are, so we can't remove that. But I found the most success in entering a room with confidence, knowing what you're going to talk about, absorbing when you don't, learning constantly, so that the next time you're in a conversation and someone may not look to you for that input, when you can provide it, when you can speak to it, when you can think about how you sit alongside of those different inputs that come around you, you become so much more powerful. And I think that as a society, when you look at George Floyd, when you look at many of the cases that have proceeded, and you can go back to Emmett Till, you can go back to the 1800s during chattel slavery, you can go back to so many points when we were impacted and there was constant crescendos. There was no decrescendos. I mentioned I had a little bit of a music background. We've not had a point to settle ourselves. And now our voices are louder, more capable, because the tools of art that we have are equalizing. You can see it coming out of the conflicts in Ukraine today. You can see it in the conflicts around the world, where voices through art, through graffiti, through so many different forms. And I love architecture, but I also love graffiti, because the juxtaposition of the two speak the world around us. And I think that our challenge in finding equality is removing bias, the bias that our voices sometimes don't get to represent first. And I think the way that we do it is showing that our diversity is what builds us and builds our capital, builds the capital of the institutions that we're in, builds the capital of our own ability, so that when we internalize and turn the output a little bit to the direction that we feel so passionate about, you can do so many different things. You don't just have to be one thing, right? I may be of African-American descent and of my mother's Anglo-American descent, right? Which European in history, so many different characteristics that come together. But I can tell you, I am more than that. I arrive with so much more behind what people see. And that's what equality is being able to remove everything but our voices and our minds.
And I appreciate you talking about the different experiences and different identities we have and how we can bring that to our work, but also the importance of recognizing those identities and what does that mean for folks who have that and come to use our products or service. What does that mean, or folks who interpret art or design in different ways. And I think that's so important to some of the challenges from history that we're trying to address. Whether it's in our the activities we do after work or in our work. So I'm interested to hear from you, Chris, why is it important to integrate racial equity into design? And how do you do that in your work at CITI?
It's difficult. And you spoke to the newness in the role that Ventures is occupying, right? This is new for CITI to sort of grow up again. CITI's grown up many different times, but CITI has an opportunity to grow up again and learn from our past, the collective past, our unique past as CITI, and chart forward a different set of outcomes to learn our customers, to offer opportunities by listening to our customers that matter to them, especially in the locales, as CITI Ventures is able to do in California, for example, with some of the looks at our different neighborhoods and how we can, provide differently and be enabling, to really just thinking about our products and our outcomes as a collection of the moments that we want to build, not that we're just in, but that we want, like, equality in an experience is so many different things. Inclusion means so many different personas are included, but we have to be one of those personas. And we have to design that. We have to be part of the design, part of the voice of a corporate outcome. So it's a responsibility that we are also learning at the same time, but through specific functions that we've built within our organization and through specific projects that we entail, we're able to contribute in many different ways. So yeah, I think that it's a lot for us to think about together, right? How do we build CITI and our products to be better for our customers over time?
I appreciate that. And, that's some of the things that I think through as I, take on this initiative. I've only been here for about 90 days. And so still thinking hard about what this work means for us. But, one of the things we talk about on our team, of which Dr. Raven Veal sits on, we talk about history, right? And you have to think about the structures and the systems that got us here. And when I say here, we think about issues as it relates to the racial wealth gap. We think about issues as it relates to lack of credit for African Americans and Latinos. And we think about the kind of data that is used to make decisions, right, around credit and housing. And so those are the kinds of historical nuances from the purview of a bank that center us in our work. And we're on this journey to figure out, how can we disrupt the product development process from the ideation to the commercialization? So that is, considering the user who is Black and brown, who is going to use this platform or this credit card or this checking account, to ask them, what does it mean? Where are the opportunities or challenges? To also think about how it's designed, right? The prototype. Have you tested it out with different communities? One person was sharing with me the opportunity at some point in the product development process when they realized that, does Braille need to be on credit cards? But right now, credit cards are it's like a sticker, right? As opposed to the numbers was actually meant something for folks who are not able to see, right? Because you could feel your numbers. And so I think about those things that if you're not at the table, teams might not had that nuance and that experience because there might not be a diversity of people who sit there. And then I think about commercialization. Who is the product being marketed to? And why and how, right? Are there different faces featured on the advertising campaign? And how do we use data, right, to make decisions that get people access to the services that the bank requires? And so, we're disrupting a process and some systems that have been around for many years at the bank. And so even, thinking through how do we get our colleagues on board to really be champions of this work, right? It requires all of us, and there's no blaming in this, right? But we do know that there is fact and data that shows there are challenges for different community members. And so to be able to implement change, we have to do things differently. And so that's just some of the things that, I've been thinking over for the last couple of weeks. What do you think about, some of what I've shared, Chris? And is there an example that you can provide that shows how you all have integrated racial equity into your work? I know you've spoken a little bit about inclusive design that's being led by someone on your team. And so I think that would be really great for the students to hear.
Yeah, again, it's new for us. So while our products get developed across multiple functions, we have digital product teams who work with business teams who look across various different sets of information as we build products and what have you. But we are also bound by federal laws to adhere to not having bias in our usage of data and in how we qualify customers. That can seem very built towards applications, right? Where you have legalese in there and you are bound to certain characteristics that really are very important for us to have adherence to. But then beyond that, it's the experiences. You mentioned the piece of Braille or the cards that are flat today that need that Braille imprint in order to be a little bit more inclusive than they were the day before. That's a hard thing for us to tool. It's an extremely important thing for us to consider in the world that we live in, is that it is, there are multiple perspectives that people interact in. And I think that it's also important that we not just look at what data means, but also when we're building our systems, making sure that we're including the voices on our team that represent across the board and are able to ask the questions that matter, right? Be it what is our, sorry, my dogs are about to come downstairs, so forgive me, but what is our collective usage of language that makes sure it is clear, it is importantly aligned with the client, whomever that they may be, but also not isolating who the client could be, right? And so we have, in our inclusive design space, we look at our language, we look at the usage of color, of a lot of our values, how we present information, how we consider speaking to different moments that our clients experience. That's tooled not just in our digital experiences, but in how we talk to our clients in our assisted channels, our call centers, our chat, and as well as our branches. So we think through and through in our experiences, how to change the voice that we express when we talk and we communicate with our customers. That's first. I think that learning how to communicate is crucial. Our design that follows should be as representative as humanly digitally possible. How to get there, again, that's a road. We are, much like you, observing some of our own design patterns, our own content patterns, how we speak to customers. So our inclusive design team is taking that effort on now to continually look at all the work that's emerging and put that valuation on how much work that we're able to steer, include more and more inclusive in that moment. So that's what we do today.
That reminds me, it makes me think of, I think maybe one of your team members was talking about even the kind of bot channel that shows up on like a website. You know, how do they speak to different customers, and how do you even think about designing that so that it's plain language and such
Right.
like that? These are things that people don't think about, but are so important to the
They're very
experiences
important.
folks have with services.
Yeah, and you know, it comes down to representation and the illustrations that we may bring forward, right? So color theory is not just about, to me, what colors represent a brand. It's also what colors are surrounding that brand, right? So that if human objects are part of the form of design, then make sure that they're at the baseline representative,
Right.
right? That should be it shouldn't be a response to feedback. It should be the first thing that we put forward. That's also a cultural change that we've put a lot of effort into. And I think it's important that we continue to have those conversations as part of design, our process, the through and through of the review moments, all the way from the concept, all through the reviews, through, to your point earlier, testing, making sure that we're asking a wide range of customers, which we try out in every test that we conduct to make sure that we've got a wide range. But being specific as well, and listening to the feedback that's coming in from clients to make sure that we're representing them, and especially where it may impact differently. So, and we get unique feedback from our channels that at times can give those inferences and help inform our design.
I really appreciate hearing that. You're right. And, you know, while you were talking, I was thinking about, you know, some of the consequences we have seen when companies don't take into account different user experiences, or when teams are not diverse. You know, everything from, you know, glasses that are created by tech companies that have a visual kind of experience, right? Different people have different size shaped of heads and noses, right? Is that taken into account when the technologies is developed? You know, search engines, right? When you typed, you know, there's a major story about typing a particular name or a phrase in, and a kind of derogatory or stereotypical images that come up, right? And that has to do with folks who are doing the coding, right? And using the data and figuring out, you know, what needs to come up for the user. And so the point is that this this, focus on racial equity, or some might even call it, thinking through like what are the kind of, systemic kind of racist kind of things that are already embedded in the data and such like that. They're so important to our work because they can also mean opportunity between, as I said again, housing, right? And making a decision for you based off of the lack of information that it may have. And so I see a lot of teams are actually popping up at different companies around responsible innovation, which has to do with a lot of this work, right? Making sure there are checkpoints along the way that somebody is saying, asking those deep questions. Did you consider this, right? Have you spoken to this community? And being able to have safeguards so that we protect people. I'm curious, where do you see this space going in the future, Chris? And what do you think lies ahead?
Wow. I come from a different neighborhood. So I think of opportunity starting at our neighborhoods and knowing who surround us, who we serve, who surrounds the people that we serve. How do we become as broadly impactful as possible in that regard, be it our hiring practices, looking to skill up where, not everybody has the same opportunity, but there's a lot of people in various age ranges who can take their collective experience prior to their collective organization skills, their collective ideation skills, and translate it. So I think part of our responsibility is in, thinking about who we integrate into our process of learning, and in return, building who we are from. That's one place I think the future has to become more and more opportunity driven, is not just looking at opportunities for a very specific few people who are already within the space. We know that there are more and more tech jobs of tomorrow. Why aren't we building our nation to be more and more tech capable? I think that's a question we all have to answer. CITI has a role in that. And our products are one way to get there. The data that serves our communities is another way to get there. But I think we have to look beyond just the check boxes of what it means to be equal. We have to ask not just the questions that we know, but start to look in somewhat like mining, right? Where you're looking for something, but you don't know exactly where it's going to be found. We've learned how to find those things better over time. But the first people who started mining, they didn't know what exactly they were doing. They started digging. They identified different things as they dug. And we have to dig into problems and our own curiosity, build it into our collective as CITI, and all companies, not just CITI. And we have to be able to do that. It's hard though, because we don't have the muscle memory to just enact that right today. We're all learning at the same time. But you know what? A lot of companies are doing this. They're asking these questions. That's the way that we start to get answers in one place. We learn, and everybody starts to do it. Some people say, yeah, it's competition. Now all these companies want to just jump in. That's great. Because if they're not jumping in, what does that say about them? So, yeah.
And absolutely. And what will be the change that we will see that we all seek? Last 2 minutes, what advice would you give to current design students?
Your curiosity is more profound now, and it will continue to be more profound now, and so on and so forth. Use your curiosity as your strongest ally, because no matter what you work in your 9 to 5, where you work outside of that to contribute your honed skills as an artist, that's your contribution. One thing I've learned from one of my bosses in a former life is I was challenged. I was curious, do I want to be a designer anymore? Do I want to move into technology? Do I want to move more into strategy? So just before you do that, just consider that designers are unique. We can think about the story to tell, and we can tell it with our design, with our art. So build upon that. I would say never stop building, much like you did in your own career, in your own learning career. You continue to pivot your knowledge in directions where you felt the most energized and impactful.
Yeah.
I say do the same with your baseline. Art is a great baseline for anyone to have. And I think more and more companies today say, well, we're incorporating design thinking. You know, architecture does design, they do design in a technology sense. Architects are design. Observe the world of design around you and continue to learn from the world because it's continuing to give.
I love that. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you to the organizers of this conference. This has been a really great experience. And I really hope that everyone enjoyed our conversation.
Indeed.
I think we did, Dominique. Thanks for asking the questions, Chris. Thank you for answering. And what I love about segments like this is we get a chance to see, behind the names of these, big corporations that we see commercials for, that we encounter in our daily lives. We see the real human beings doing the work, the day-to-day work, and we see that's real people who are like ourselves who are doing the work. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, everyone. So now we are going to transition into our final break. We'll see you in 15 minutes. So we'll see you at 45.